and welcome. It is my pleasure to introduce to all of you Sampada Agarwal from Raleigh, North Carolina, a multi-talented artist, not only in the visual arts, but also in other areas like the performing arts, including music and dance. Sampada loves exploring traditional Indian folk and tribal arts. Her work has been accepted in a number of exhibitions and shows, and one of her Warli work was accepted at NCMA for the art of the auction. She is also a certified Zentangle teacher and has had several very interesting experiences teaching not only Zentangle, but also other art forms like Warli. She is an Ekal IndiArt ambassador. And today, it's really my pleasure to have you on this particular talk show. Thank you so much for joining me, Sampadaji. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Ranjani. This is so great. I'm really, really honored to be on this platform and so happy to be the IndiArt ambassador for 2020.
That is really, really kind of you. And what really absolutely blows my mind when I hear your stories is how can one woman have so much talent? You know, that's God was, I think, unfairly doling out so much. So you are, of course, professionally a financial engineer. You work at Credit Suisse. And at the same time, you are giving so much time to art. So tell me, where did you learn it? I know most Indians say they never learned art form formally. So where did your inspiration and your training come from?
I think my training came from my mother. So art was like part of our lives. So my mother, before she married, was an art teacher. So she always brought art into everyday lives. And we are three sisters. I'm the youngest of them. And so I think that whole, creating your own greeting cards for every occasion and such was like an everyday in our lives. And also my mother used to, and still continues to do rangoli in our entrance every single day, even though we live in a different state. I was brought up in Gujarat. And so that was something I used to really look forward to. Every time she would go out to make the rangoli, I would kind of go run behind her and try to see what is it that she's creating today. So I think it has been back in my subconscious all my life. It's just that I got busy with work and kids and everything. And so now is when I have started actively pursuing it much more.
Much more. And that's very interesting, actually, if you look at the Rangoli, right? I don't remember why, but I was also asked every morning, I didn't even question, why should I have a drawing in front of my house?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, now that I think about it, what was the point of it? And every day it had to be washed away. It was art that was made and art that went away. Of course, they also talk about the rice flour being good to the ants and all of that. But to have it so artistically, I think there is a forced, nature of it. And thank God, So even though I claim I really don't know art at all, but I do know how to do some rangoli because that's what we did. We had to do it.
Exactly.
In the morning. And I think that's something about art, right? Like, I mean, I think people now think of it as an extracurricular or not to be taught. But in the Indian tradition, I mean, all women.
It is part of our life.
It is the part of the life, Madhubani also, I heard, people did it at home, no question about it. So, but now going from there, and also into then, I know that you have had a long and varied journey. I think you had a few visits back to India, right? And you said that you were thinking of pursuing Garba singing as a big passion. Tell us about that.
Well, when I was growing up, I just happened to be amongst some very like-minded, musically oriented people. And we used to have a very small informal group. Every Sunday, we used to just get together and practice. And somehow it morphed into a huge band. And most of us, unfortunately, we're all from engineering. We're all engineering students. And we used to all get together and play music. And Garba is a dance which needs live music. And so we used to provide that live music. And as time progressed, our group started getting some kind of a reputation, and we ended up playing for crowds as large as 10,000 people, and used to be a 10-day long event. And every night we used to start singing at around 9:30, 10 in the evening to about 3 in the morning, and then we used to go to college and, everything else as usual. So I don't know how we did that, but we ended up going to the UK twice. We got invited there, and then we also recorded a few cassettes and CDs and such. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting experience,
I
and
can
it continues to be part of my life. I still sing. So
thing. And then you have a Kathak Visharad. So, I mean, and then you're a
yes.
badminton Gujarat chase champion. So, having done all that, how did you decide to then go back to actually doing art? What happened, and how did this become so much more of your life than it
I,
was?
I call myself an accidental artist.
Yeah.
It was all an accident. I mean, it just so happened that because I had not formally learned how to sing, I thought I should learn how to sing formally. And so I started getting into a little more singing practice every day. And then this was when I moved temporarily back to India in Pune. And that plus my teaching and everything ended up making an impact on my voice. And so I was uh, asked not to say anything and be very, very quiet for a month. And that just drove me nuts, because I was like, I can just sit here, do nothing. And so I picked up the paintbrush, and I think the rest is history.
Oh my God. Oh my God. That's just fantastic. And you seem to be drawn to the traditional art forms of Madhubani. And I'm having a beautiful painting of yours right
Yeah.
behind. So, what, I know that some people get drawn to Impressionism or other Western forms of art, but you seem
Mhm.
to have been drawn to the Eastern forms of folk arts, especially. What draws you?
Right. Right. I think that is maybe because I was brought up in a very small town. So I think I'm very much in tune with the rural side of India. Also, both my eldest sister, who is a ophthalmologist, and her husband, they have always been very philanthropic in nature. They lived in a very small village for the first 10 years of their lives as doctors, and they continue to do this kind of practice all their lives. So I think philanthropy and living in small villages is something that I find very much in tune with. And the fact that a lot of these art styles are kind of losing ground because they either don't get the recognition, or they are not able to sustain themselves on it, and so the artists are forced to have their children look for alternative ways of earning money, and so we are losing out a lot. And my attempt was to ultimately, help out those artists. But in the process, if you learn about them, at least you can understand how difficult it is. So the next time you go and buy something like that, you can at least not bargain and say, okay, let me give you a little more than what you're asking for.
Beautiful,
So
beautiful.
at least that sensitivity people can get.
Actually, that's a very interesting thing that you say that, when I look at Ekal too, when we go to our villages, the art that I see is just
Yeah.
spectacular. And it's so varied, it depends on the town you are in
Yeah.
or village. And it's
Right.
so varied. And to your point of, these are the people that are paid so little for their work, and they should be paid,
Yeah.
much more, at least a
Right.
living wage so that they can sustain it.
Yeah.
I think that's a very, very interesting thing. And then you went on from that very traditional thing into this thing called Zentangle. So,
Yes.
unentangle for us what Zentangle is all about. I'd
Right.
never heard
Right. So
about it till I met you. So,
right. So yeah, it's a fairly new kid on the block as far as the art scene is concerned. It is a brainchild of a husband-wife pair who live in Rhode Island in the US. So Maria Thomas and Rick Roberts are the ones who started this kind of a movement, I want to call it. What I like about Zentangle is that it is a very simple way for people to create something. So they empower people to uh, call themselves artists, because a lot of times we have this mental block saying, okay, I'm not an artist, I will. and I mean, case in point, you say that you're not an artist. I want to take that up as a challenge and say, Ranjani ji, come to me and I will make sure that you become an
Of
artist,
course,
because
of course.
there is no such thing as you have missed the boat or anything
Right,
like that.
right.
I mean, if you can write your name, you can do art. And then in this day and age, I feel, where we are so distracted by so many things happening around us, sometimes just taking a little time off and then just
Right.
taking something very elemental like paper and pen, and then just concentrating on that for even 15 minutes,
Right.
it's a mindfulness exercise, and it really helps you focus, it helps you perform better. I mean, it's, for me, art has always been meditation, and somehow me stumbling into Zentangle was just serendipity. I feel it was meant to be.
Yeah. So you were, I have to say that I'm a performing artist, by the way. I'm a Bharatanatyam dancer. I teach
Yeah,
pretty seriously and all of that. So, and
right.
I have the same thing that everybody can dance. So I do, I think I should take
Yeah.
that back. But at this point, I haven't put my, pen to paper and all of that. So I should just make that clarification here. But now you said that you have actually done Zentangle work on a car. Is that true? And so I would love
Yes.
to know more about that. And I think you compared it, Zentangle to other art forms like baking is to cooking. Uh,
Mhm.
but yeah, would you like to clarify that for us a little
Sure,
bit?
sure. So again, when I first came to the US, I didn't know how to cook, because obviously I was busy doing so many other things while I was growing up. And my mother was so clear on that, saying, "Oh, you will figure it out. Don't worry about the cooking." So she let me just fly. And that
Yeah,
was just so amazing. So when I first came here and I tried to cook, obviously I couldn't, because cooking is an art, I
right.
was told. I mean, and and it was very expensive to make phone calls at that time, but
Uh,
whenever I did, my mom used to say, put a little bit of that, because even she didn't know what the
what was
measurements
cooking?
were, because
Right,
things were all by experience.
right.
And so I would end up just learning again by
Yeah,
experience, and kind of, you just stumble and fall, uh, and just figure it out, kind of a thing. While baking, I found, when I first came to this country, it was like a revelation, because it was like, oh, I can bake. And so because baking has got very clear instructions. You have step one, do this; step two, do this. And then chances are, if you don't mess those steps up, you will end up with something edible at the end of it, right?
right.
And so at that time, when I first started working, I took a cake and I said, oh, I can cook now. And somebody corrected me and they said, no, baking is not cooking. And I didn't realize that there was that distinction.
Yeah,
And now suddenly it kind of made sense to me. I'm like, of course, baking is not cooking, because
right,
baking has got very clear instructions. So when somebody asks me what is Zentangle, I say Zentangle is baking, because it just demystifies the whole process of how to create the art.
right.
And so and because it has got such clear instructions, chances are you will not, and there is no concept of messing up anyway,
Anyway,
but you will create something, and something that you will be happy recreating again.
yeah.
And the next time you create, it might look a little different, maybe even better or whatever. But so that's the correlation I see. Other art forms might be like cooking, while Zentangle is like baking.
I think you're going to teach us that in the IndiArt workshop, if I understand that correctly. Am I right?
um
You haven't
not
thought about it.
not really. What we are going to do, because that was again another challenge, because there are so many outstanding Madhubani artists
Right,
who are
right.
my fellow art ambassadors, so there is no point in going into Madhubani. Wardley also, it has been offered
Yeah,
before. And so I thought that we will do something with mandalas. So mandalas are again quite open-ended, in the sense that you can go ahead and use this in something more Indian. So I'm going to do something like that, and that's for that you will
forward.
have to watch that teaser video that I will create.
I look forward to that. I look forward to that. So why did you take your time to give so much time to Ekal? We are so honored that you do, but we'd love to know from you.
Yeah, as I said, philanthropy has always been part of my life. I mean, it has been how I have been brought up. It's something that my parents practiced, it's something that my family practices. So it was very natural for me to do this. And even with my singing, I always do it for charity. So I have always been uh, philanthropic minded, and this seemed like a perfect marriage, because there is art and there is philanthropy, and then the end result is even better, because then you're benefiting uh, for education in rural India, which you cannot. I mean, this is just perfect, you know.
Perfect. Yeah.
So
Yeah. For
more
those
than
of
happy.
you, so for those of you watching, Ekal is an organization that brings education to over 100,000 rural remote villages. So thank you for that. And so I'm going to end this interview asking you about your pet project that is coming up, where you're taking Varley and doing
Mhm.
something very contemporary with it. I'd love
Yes.
to know more about that.
Yes. So we I live in Raleigh, but the neighboring town, which is the city of Durham, where I don't know if you've heard Duke University is there.
Ah, yeah.
It used to be a very rural town, and now it is a nice urban university place. So we have got a grant to paint a mural. And so my idea was to use the Varli symbols and the Varli motifs, but the content will be the history of the city of Durham. So that is going to be what we will be doing in the next month or so, I hope, once the constraints on going out and painting will get lifted. Then we will just go ahead and work on that.
Wow, what an exciting thing to see a Varley mural depicting a very different kind of
Yes.
environment, different story. And it's quite a testament that all these art forms that are folk art forms can tell any story that you
Oh,
want.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I totally agree because I just had so much fun because in traditional Warli style, they do paddy plantations. While here, it started with cotton. So I had to kind of come up with the motif of how cotton would look like in Warli style, you know, and then tobacco and all the manufacturing that happens with tobacco. So I'm just having a ball just creating those motifs using the Warli framework. So
We look forward to seeing that when it comes out on board. So thank you
absolutely.
so much, Sampada, for all that you do. And again, like I said, God has been way too kind when He gave you all these talents. And I look forward to maybe dancing to a garba that you sing as well at some point. Who
Absolutely.
knows, what the future holds. I
Yeah,
love to dance
absolutely.
garba, so it would be a pleasure to do that. But thank you for giving your time, and really thank you for your time today as well to do this interview. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Ranjani ji. Thank you.